Welcome to Market Movers. I'm Dave Hightower, joined by Dan Bosse. We come into the crop report here. Hopefully we're going to see some final adjustment to acres. We've been waiting on this, thinking there's going to be some lower acres, but may have some lower yield in beans. But then again, we've had really good weather since this report's probably calculated.
Well, we have, David, and as we think about this report, FSA data is finally included in this data to give us some really good estimates on harvested acreage for corn and beans. Along with that, we finally get objective yield counts, something else the market's been waiting for, so we're going to have a good feel of what kernel weights are in corn and what soybean pod weights are. So overall, this is a report that will be a defining moment for the corn and bean crops this year, and will give us some real clarity going forward.
And we've had lofty ending stocks projections for beans at times, and those have been coming down.
Well, I think what's really happening for this report is, as we think forward, we had the stocks report last week that cut corn 322 million bushels. We had 116 million bushel decline in soybeans because of diminished crops the year before, lower end stocks. That really sets the table for this report on Thursday. If we see a yield number like at 166 or under in corn, that will be bullish, something under 47 on beans. I think that really gets the markets going because, as you say, end stocks will be coming down to levels that are deemed as tight historically.
Now, in the corn market, probably a little more volatility. The trade expects lower yields, but we've had better weather again since then. But if less acres are planted, we're going to start to see evidence maybe that the USDA sees a little bit tighter supply.
Well, they do, and if you look at the average trade guesstimate for this report, we're talking about corn end stocks being between 1.7 and 1.8 billion bushels. That's substantially tighter than we've been thinking for pretty much the latter part of the summer. So that's tight on corn. In soybeans, we may be down to 550 million, but you got to get below 450 if you really want to start putting on some bullish ideas.
So before we dive into our trade discussions, I'd like to point out that these trades are examples and not recommendations or advice. So Dan, how do you see it?
Well, Dave, the one trade we like is we like looking at buying a December $4 corn call. Now, that's only about 15 cents away from the market as it sits today. We think it gives us some time. We're going to buy it at 5 cents. We're going to risk 3 cents with an objective of 10 cents. We are hopeful in believing that this market will give us some bullishness on corn. I'm thinking about a corn yield of about 166 bushels an acre.
I like that. It's the tighter market. But Dan, as an example, I'm looking to buy January soybean 930 $10 bull call spread. And then I want to sell a January soybean 870 put for a net cost on the spread of 12. I'm selling the put because we do have the prospect of very high supply still, even if we're going to get less supply. I want to use an objective of 33 cents, and I want to risk a total of 7.5 on the trade.
Well, I like that, David. I think in a general sense that bean pod weight could be down. It was too high back in September. I think that's where the decline will come in yield. Maybe we get a yield number of 46.5 or 47 that'll really make that trade good.
And we might get some difference from the average trade estimate in both these markets. So Dan, on Market Movers, we like to educate new folks just tuning in. And this time I want to talk about the concept of trend yield.
Well, trend yield is something that goes back over an extended period of time. So we take yield and we look at that average gain each year. In the case of corn, it's about 1.8 bushels per acre. Whether it's technology or the farmer or weather has added on to corn yield year after year, and that has given us a trend. So we look forward to the 2020 crop year, for example, the U.S. corn trend yield will be about 178.6 bushels per acre, meaning that this year's corn yield at 166 is about 12 bushels below that.
But we're looking for poor weather probably eats into that trend yield gain.
Well, I think that's right. I think weather this year has really been inclement, whether it's the cool, wet conditions at the start of the growing season, and now cool and wet to get it out of the field. You know, maybe propane futures are the place to be looking at length because it's going to take a lot of propane to get this corn crop dried down.
Very good. Thanks, Dan, for your insight. We'll keep a close eye on the market. Thanks for joining us on Market Movers. I'm Dave Hightower. Trade well and trade smart.